Hello, hello, hello. Welcome again to another edition of Relationships 101. I am your guy, Pastor Strick, and I am here with the beautiful Pastor Sean Strickland. And we are here once again to help you improve all of your relationships. Listen, I know it's a Tuesday night. I know that you have probably spent the last couple of nights watching championship basketball. The ladies were on Sunday and the men were on last night, but there is nothing competing for your time tonight. So get on in here. Go ahead and tag a friend. Go ahead and tag a family member. Let them know Relationships 101 is live right now. And if you were here with us last month, in the month of March, you know we spent some time answering the questions that you, our listeners, sent in. And man, were they a doozy. We had some special guests with us. Pastor Nitra was with us and Pastor Ralph was with us. And guess what? They're back tonight. They're back tonight. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next hour just getting into the other half of the questions that people sent in. In fact, I think we probably had as many questions submitted for this second Relationships 101 as we did for the first one. And as you know, we didn't get to all the questions in the first one. So what we did is we took those questions along with these questions and kind of categorized them into 4 areas. We're going to be answering questions tonight that have to do with marriage and romantic relationships. We're going to be answering questions that have to do with friendships. We're going to be answering your questions about how do you handle workplace relationships. And then finally, we're going to be answering some of your questions about how do I deal with this family God gave me? How do I deal with these folks who I share relationship with? How do we get along? And there's been some great questions. We won't be able to get to all of them. But we will get to some of the ones that I think are real, are relevant, and raw. And so I need you to do what you always do. I need you to help us get as many people in here. So right now, pause if you would, tag a friend, tag a family member, share this to your page, share it to your story. Let the people know that Pastor Strick and Pastor Sean and Pastor Ralph and Pastor Nitra are here to give us some sound advice to what may be some crazy questions. All right. Listen, I'm excited about you guys being here. Pastor Sean, you want to say anything to the people before we get started tonight?
Listen, I asked them to come back, or kind of asked Tone, right? Them to come back, and they're back tonight, and we're ready. And I see the numbers going up, but I need you guys to do something for me. The number of people watching don't match the number of people who have engaged. And we are going to keep stressing how important that is for Facebook analytics. You know that we're going to have a dope conversation here. You know that we're going to say things that are going to help people live in victory in every area of life. And we need your help. So we need you to go, and we need you to love the broadcast. When you first came in, it gave you an opportunity to love it. We also need you to do some engagement in the comments. We need you tagging. We need you giving hearts. We need you, if you haven't told us, tell them where you watch it from. Do we have Facebook people here? Do we have YouTube people here? And we're really working on it, Pastor Strick, because we've got a lot of people who are really saying to us, you guys need to come on over to the IG world. So we really need to work on how we're going to do that. But right now, we need everybody who is watching to tag at least 3 people. We need you to go up to where the broadcast comes on and love it. And when I mean love it, I don't just mean love it in the comments. I mean at the place where you actually can say that you love it. And then we need you engaging here. And we have our guests back that we're going to bring here. We are ready. We are excited. I don't know if they are excited, but I can tell you that we're all in the spirit, because I noticed that everybody wore black today. And so I feel like that means maybe it's going to be some sniper answers up in here. I don't really know, but I think it's going to be super dope. I'm excited about it. So y'all keep tagging, y'all keep engaging, and let's get back in here and let's do some good work. So welcome back, Pastor Ralph, Pastor Nitra. We're super excited to have you guys. Thank you guys for coming back. I appreciate that. I want to say, Nitra, your skin is popping today. I want to say, ooh, Ralph, your skin is popping too. So that's what I wanted to say.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to jump into the questions tonight. As always, we love to see your engagement. We're here to have a conversation. We're here to have a conversation with our guest panelists. They have expertise in various areas as well as we do, but we don't claim to be experts and know it all. And so we are living and growing together. The answers you're going to get are going to be real answers. They're going to be biblically based answers. So if the Bible bothers you, this might not be the broadcast for you.
Or it might be exactly the
or it
broadcast
might be
for you.
exactly what you really, really need. But that's where we're going to be coming from today. But they're going to be real answers rooted in truth and experience. And so again, we just encourage you to get your friends and family over here. And so we're gonna start tonight. I won't start with the marriage and romantic questions first. Let's jump into some friendship questions. Let's jump into some friendship questions first. And we got a couple of those that I think are good questions, because the reality is that we live in an environment now where friendships are like they used to be, but they aren't like they used to be. It used to be, if you wanted to talk to your friend, you picked up the phone and you had to call them. And if they didn't answer, you just couldn't talk to them until you could talk to them on the phone or see them in person. But now we have things like text message and email. And sometimes communication can get lost in what you're trying to say and what the other person is perceiving you to say. And so we know relationships are important. In the Bible talks about the relationship between David and Jonathan, and what a beautiful relationship that was. And so while relationships are important, we have to know how to navigate them. So I guess we'll start off, and y'all bear with me. I tried to put these questions in the group so that when I ask the question, they can be on the screen. So here is the first question that we'll start with tonight. This question says, what should I do when a friendship starts to feel one-sided and I'm always the one reaching out? And we know that may not necessarily be the truth, but it can certainly feel that way. And so, Pastor Ralph, I'll toss it to you. Pastor Nitra, you can jump in there. But when you have a friendship, assuming it's one that you value and you want to keep, what do you do when it starts to feel, and that's that word, feel one-sided, and it seems as though you feel like you're the one who's always reaching out? What should a person do?
Got it. Hey, can y'all hear? I'm using a different mic. I use my laptop. All right, cool. Well, it's easy to cut people off. Cutting people off is the easy, like, I'm done. But if it's really a friendship, one thing you need to do is take a step back, pause for a moment, is what I've done. Because I've had a couple of these where I'm like, okay, let me see if I text them, checked in. Let me see if they're going to text me back. And then you don't get anything, but it's a friendship you value. So I'm like, hey, I'm just reaching out to see if everything's good. I've been trying to talk to you. You ain't reaching back. We good? You good? Is there something going on they know about? Kind of find out where they are at. And then you got to realize sometimes friendships are not forever. Sometimes friendships end. And so you got to evaluate whether that friendship is for a season or is this a lifetime friendship. Lifetime friendships are more, I put more work in. But sometimes people come into your life for a season, and you got to recognize that lack of communication may be the ending of the season. The same way we know fall starts when leaves turn color, then there's some indications that friendship may be fizzling out because it's not something that's meant to be permanent. And then if they still don't reciprocate, then you got to understand that you got to shift your energy because at the end of the day, trying to maintain a friendship with somebody that won't be your friend going to drain you. It's going to create poor feelings and things like that. And so you got to be honest with yourself. Say like, hey, I really like them. I really want to be their friend, but I got to redefine what this looks like because I'm not going to be in a friendship, but that's not reciprocated. And so you got to understand that even if you think it's for a lifetime, they may think it's for a season. And you got to get to the point where you're like, you know what? I ain't doing this. Not in a I'm cutting you off, you crap type way, but understanding that maintaining that takes too much of my energy, and you don't got to feel guilty about doing that. I mean, it happens. So that's kind of how I navigated that myself. And I think that's what people got to do. And like I said, everybody ain't your people forever. And you got to really categorize people and know where they fit in your life. Because sometimes they're there to help you grow up. Sometimes they help you to guide you. And sometimes they're forever people. And you got to understand what's the difference.
That's good.
Pastor Nietzsche, thoughts? You may be on mute.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was on mute. I agree with Ralph. I would also say sometimes you have to assess friendships, and an assessment meaning intentionally assess. Hey, we've been doing this friendship for whatever. How am I doing as a friend? What do I need? What do you need from me? This is what I need from you. I would like for you to initiate if it's a friendship that I want to continue. And then we'll see how things go. I think people have the right to know what's going on before I just walk away. Now, if I bring it to your attention and the pattern doesn't stop, and then I'm going to do something different. I had someone tell me that they used to always be the person reaching out. They said, this was my very best friend. And they said one day they stopped reaching out, and it's been 7 years since they talked to their best friend. And I was like, wow. So sometimes, we think we are more important than in a person's life than they think we are. But I do think having a conversation is, again, if I consider you a friend and I think this is a friendship worth or a relationship worth working through, I would say having the conversation and then make the necessary adjustments. If they don't change, okay. That's just me.
I also think it's important to give friendships the autonomy to grow and change. And it doesn't have to be negative. People go through different seasons of their life. One of the things that I noticed about a couple of my friends when I got married is that things changed a little bit. But when they got married, it kind of changed back. And a lot of times in life, people are just in different seasons. Sometimes you got seasons where you got friends who may be going back to school. And if they're going back to school, they may not have as much time to hang out with you as they used to. And it has nothing to do with them not liking you. It's just that we all have 24 hours in a day, and sometimes certain priorities take precedent. And I think it's important to give that same grace to other people. But when things start to feel one-sided for me, what I've always done is I try to put a feeler out there. I try to check my temperature and go, am I tripping? So I believe in what gets measured gets results. So I say, okay, I'm going to call you and text you the next 5 times. And I'm going to see if you ever text me or call me back. And if you don't, that's fine. You may be busy. But then I'll see how long it takes. And kind of like your friend, if it takes 7 years, then I realize that maybe I've put more value on that relationship than they did. And that's okay. But I think the other thing that's important for people is that you don't wait around on that particular one person and don't add more friends to your life. The second part of that is I've always said, I think it's important how people define friendship. I have a lot of acquaintances, a lot of acquaintances, but I can probably count, and it's growing, but I can probably count on both of my hands and feet now how many friends I got.
20 friends?
Maybe. how many friends I got, but you can have wonderful relationship with acquaintances. And I don't think people think about that. Everybody doesn't, we don't have to be the kindergartners in the sand trap. And you're my friend. And I go, what's your friend name? Oh, I don't know. We don't have to be those kindergartners who everybody's a friend. And if you live your life like that, I think there'll sometimes be a little less disappointment. But if it's a friendship you value, then I like Pastor Ralph said, I think you put the work in to try to salvage that relationship.
Well, I want to add something. I agree with you guys, but I want to add something else. that number one, I got a lot of friends. I mean, I have a lot of friends and a lot of different categories of friends. I got like my best friend from college who we just got to see, and I have my best friend from high school, and then I have like Edwin as my best friend, and then I have Unica as my best friend. And to me, though, they're all best friends, but they all represent something different to me, right? And so based on that, I don't have the same expectations of, say, for example, my best friend from college, Shannon, as I do for Unica, because our seasons are different. But the one caveat that I want to make that I think we need to consider as we get older is that when people go through things, they respond differently. So there may be seasons where I do need to text you 5 times. You lost your husband.
Sure.
You lost your mother. You're going through a season, and I do need to be the person checking in on you.
Yes.
It just shouldn't be that for 20 years.
Right.
But I think it's because I think reciprocity doesn't mean equal.
It doesn't mean tit for tat.
It just means equality.
Mhm.
And I think that there are seasons where, as a friend, I have to carry you in a way. You know, I feel like when my kids were little, I feel like that all my friends would say they did way more calling of me than I did of them. They checked in on me because, listen, I just was trying to find a space where somebody wasn't screaming in the background. And now I'm the person who calls more. And I just think we want to be careful about that, about not assuming what something means, right? We want to be careful that we don't assume, that we're not ignoring, that I'm like, oh, Nitra didn't call me, but back when you went through a divorce, oh, Nitra's not responding to me. Nitra's going through a divorce right now. Does that mean that Nitra doesn't like me, or Nitra doesn't care, or Nitra just doesn't have capacity for me right now? And I think we need to make sure that we discern that as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Let's tackle another friendship question. It's kind of in this vein, but it flips the script just a little bit. And this particular question asks it like this. It says, here it is. How can I communicate honestly with a friend of mine, right? I'm considering them a friend. I assume they consider me a friend, whose negative outlook drains my energy. And I need to tell them without hurting their feelings, because I want to value this relationship. Maybe I even want to help them. Maybe I even want things to get better and change. How do I communicate that to a friend without hurting their feelings?
Oh, I want to go first on this.
Go ahead.
No, I want to go first. I think this is the wrong question.
Well, it's their question.
No, I'm saying, but I'm saying, I'm saying it's the wrong question. The idea that I'm going to tell someone that they're operating negatively and it won't hurt them or tick them off or irritating, I think that is unrealistic. The question is, do I care enough to be honest, and let's work through the fact that your feelings were hurt? Because some people don't even know how negative they are. So then I come in and Ralph says to me, hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but you've been being really negative right now. The truth of it is that most people don't have the capacity to hear that and not get in their feelings. Do you love me enough to tell me what I need to hear, even if it hurts my feelings? I think is a better question. Then I think that goes back to the previous question, which is this a lifetime friendship, or is this a season friendship? If it's a season friendship, then maybe I don't say nothing. I just don't talk to you. But if it's a lifetime relationship, then I gotta say, Ralph gotta say to me, hey, listen, every time I talk to you, you was telling that same sad story, and it's hard for me to be around you. That's my take.
So what I heard you say is, first of all, whoever submitted this question, that's a bad question. I'm just joking.
But I think here's the thing. I think that sometimes in relationships, we believe relationships are supposed to exist without the tension of someone ever having negative emotions. And to me, that is kindergarten relationships. Mm-hmm. If we believe that we're going to be married or have a lifelong friendship, and we're never going to say anything that stings, you're never going to say anything that the person didn't want to hear, even if they need to hear it, then I think that we have misunderstood what relationships actually require. And that's what I think is the problem with that question, because it creates a false equivalence of what relationships actually look like.
So that's what I was going to jump in and say. Very similar. I think when you ask the question without hurting their feelings, it becomes this unrealistic expectation of friendships or of relationships in general. We have to stop thinking that being in friendship or relationship means that we won't ever have hurt feelings. It means we work through that, because at some point, if you are in a relationship with somebody, if it's long term, they are going to hurt your feelings. That doesn't mean the relationship has to be over. And if that person is as negative as it sounds like on this question, they probably need to know that, because a lot of other people are probably shunning them because they don't want that same negative energy. And so as a friend, it's how can I communicate honestly with compassion, as opposed to how can I communicate without hurting their feelings. Number one, because you can't control how they feel about it. It doesn't matter how you deliver it. If you tell me I'm always negative and I drain you, you can say that with flowery topics, with perfume on it. It is still going to sting a little bit. So if I focus more on my heart when I'm delivering the message and my skill with deliverance, as opposed to how they're going to receive it, because I can't control that I think is a different mindset going into that.
No, that's what I agree with. It reminded me of a conversation I had with my kids, because they had a friend that's just like, well, Daddy, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You don't control anybody's feelings. You be respectful. You deliver it properly, and then they walk away mad or upset. That's out of our control. And so I'm with you, Nitra, 100% on that part. Like, because there's so many times I didn't, early on in my marriage, talk to April about something because I thought I was going to hurt her feelings. But there are so many times both people are injured. You're not telling them what they need to know to be corrected, but you're also hurt because you don't get what you need. So understanding that, hey, I don't control somebody's feelings, and having a conversation, though it may be crucial in the moment, can lead to some very beautiful outcomes if you stick to it.
Well, and I think to add to that, because like you, Ralph, I feel like one of the best things that Edwin ever said to me hurt my feelings the most. He actually said to me many years ago, he said, and I quote Edwin Strickland, I love you, but I haven't liked your tale for a long time. Now, here's what had happened. In trying not to tell me that, what was he doing? He wasn't talking to me as much. He wasn't being open when I was engaging with him. So as opposed to hurting my feelings one time, he was hurting my feelings a million times. So when we don't tell somebody that we're loved, hey, you're being negative, hey, you're draining me, then now everybody's cutting conversations off with them. People aren't answering their phone calls. You're having to get yourself together to talk to them, and that's actually hurting their feelings more. I've said to some people I really love, I like being around you except when you're being weird. And let me tell you the things that you're doing that are being weird. If you come to my house and I have to entertain you the entire time to make you feel loved, you're being weird, and I don't want you to come over here. Not because I don't like you, but because you want but if you need my whole attention to feel love, I can't do that with you. And I think that sometimes in our attempt not to hurt people's feelings, we're actually hurting them more. Because if you don't communicate with this person, and then you just start slowly inching them out of your life, they're walking around going, I don't even know why Sean stopped talking to me. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'm probably guilty of that. I don't mean that to be funny, but I'm probably guilty of that, because for me, if you're draining my energy, I haven't worked on it enough not to be rude. So in order not to be rude, I end up spending less time or talking to people rather than just having a hard conversation, probably because I'm thinking, I don't really want to hurt their feelings, and then you just keep letting all this stuff kind of slide. Typically what I have found, until I get to a place where I either don't talk to them at all or I explode on them. So that's an area, as I hear the three of you talk about it, I'm thinking, man, that's an area I could work on. I don't have people in my life like that now, probably because I have weeded them out, but there may have been some relationships I could have salvaged if I had worked on them to the point of saying, I'm going to tell you this and forget all about the hurting feeling part. Not that I'm going to say it in a way that hurts your feelings, but as Pastor Nitra said, I don't get to control how you feel once I've said something to you. So that's a good point.
I think a lot of people forget too that is the opportunity for a greater connection. When you work through something that's difficult, it's actually the opportunity for, like, if you work through it and you're like, man, that I gave you vulnerability and you handled that with grace. Now I feel more connected, especially in marriages, but any relationships. I think if you work through something and you like the way you work through it, man, that connection is stronger. So really what a lot of times what we do is we end up having a lot of surface level relationships because we don't want to hurt the feelings. Where if we say, hey, let's have some real conversations, it actually gives us the opportunity to have deeper relationships.
I like that. That's a perfect segue into our next set of questions. Those are a couple questions that we talked about friendships. Let's talk about family dynamics. Here's a family dynamics question that someone sent in that I thought was really good. They said, what is the healthiest way to address and heal long-standing emotional wounds within a family unit? And I'm assuming that's like maybe could be husband, wife, kids, or it could be extended family, grandparents, whatever. And to do it without reopening old conflicts. I'm not a counselor. I don't even know if that's possible, but I'm interested to hear what y'all got to say about it.
I think the problem, once again, is that clause at the end. I think very rarely do we actually heal anything without dealing with what we actually need to heal. Because this question sounds to me to say, I want to deal with something that's been a long-standing problem without dealing with the cancer that's at the root of the long-standing problem. That's what the question sounds like to me.
So another bad question by you listening. Shame on you. Shame.
But I'm saying this, that the quality of questions that we ask determine the quality of answers that we give, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that this thing, that if we have had a hard thing happen, and I think the truth of it is that in our relationship, when our relationship was crazy, and then our relationship got better, right? And what we were trying to do was to move to a great relationship without dealing with some of the things that were at the root of the not good relationship. We were so busy trying not to go back that we actually weren't able to move forward. There are some conversations that are absolutely necessary. I have to have the conversation to say, listen, when the reason I don't like being at family gatherings is because my whole life, y'all talked about how fat I was. That's why I don't enjoy being around you. So in order for us to get back to the point that I'm willing to be around you, we have to deal with the fact that even though you may have thought it was cute to call me Chub Chub, it actually injured me when you call me Chub Chub, and it's the reason I don't want to be around. And then people have to deal with how they feel about the fact that you were trying to just be funny and just to be family, and somebody was actually offended by what you did.
I wonder, and I can't speak because I don't know who sent this in. So when I'm saying bad question, I'm just joking. I don't know who sent this in, but I wonder if when the person sent this in, because in my mind, I read this and I think when it says without reopening old conflicts, I really think about like, how do we heal without getting stuck on what hurt us? You know, if I'm trying to talk to my family members about something that has injured me in the family, and I'll take it beyond Chub Chub, maybe there's been an issue of molestation in the family. And I'm wanting to try to heal and deal with that. And other people are wanting me to maybe get over it and let's move on. How do I not get stuck in that if I want to heal it in a healthy way? Yes, I'm gonna have to reopen it, but I don't want to just get stuck there again. How do I get beyond that? And I don't know if that's what that person means, but I know that I've talked to people about it. And it's like, okay, this thing happened in our family. We need to deal with it so we can all heal. But every time we talk about it, the last 5 years, we just end up in a big fight all over again and nothing gets resolved.
So I think people have to recognize when they don't have enough skill to do that. And most people don't. So you're sitting there and you have tried to do this, and every time you keep going back to this big, huge argument, that is the indication you need to bring in a professional or somebody else that is able to help you navigate through that. Because what will happen is you literally will just keep abusing each other or keep hurting each other over and over again every time you try, because everybody's in there dealing with their own stuff, and most people haven't healed enough themselves to be able to navigate. Okay, I'm going to stay calm even though my brother's going off. No, if my brother go off, I'm going to jump off. I'm going to go off. And so because of that, I think you have to be willing to say, let's get somebody else in here that can help us have skills. Maybe even let's agree to do some individual work before we come as a group or however, but we can't just keep yelling at each other every Thanksgiving thinking that we're trying to heal. That may be the goal, but that's not what's going to happen. But the other thing I think is sometimes just saying, hey, I really want us to heal from this. Who's interested in being on this journey with me? Because everybody in the family may not have the same goal of reconciliation or healing. So it might be 3 cousins and we can work. We are all willing to go to counseling, or we're all willing to sit down and have a healthy conversation. Well, us 3 cousins may be able to reconcile some things. And then maybe an aunt sees how we've grown and joins. But if we're always trying to get my family's big and we are close. But if I'm trying to get us all on the same page about one thing, that would probably be pretty impossible. So just say, hey, let me work with what I can and do what I can and get somebody in here that actually has some skills, some knowledge, some expertise that we don't have to help us navigate through those things.
Let me circle back because I love what you're saying, Nitra, and I definitely agree that we need to bring in a professional. I also want to add that many times when we are the person who has caused the injury, we don't like to sit with that. And we see that a lot when we deal with infidelity, right? Mm-hmm. The person who committed infidelity has dealt with how they felt all the time. And now it's come out and the other person is walking through the emotions. And and now the person who did it is like, can't we just move on? Can't we just let it go? Well, I think that that's unfair. And I think that sometimes what people mean as healing, they mean don't talk to me about what I did that really injured you. Mm-hmm. So the healing is that I want you to come to Thanksgiving dinner and ignore that you spent 12 years being molested in grandma's house, because it makes us uncomfortable to talk about the fact that you were molested in grandma's house. And so rather than hear your pain of feeling unprotected, of feeling unsafe, that you don't value the family in the same way, what I say is healing is that I won't need you to shut up and stop talking about this so we can just have Thanksgiving dinner. And what I would say is that just like when we say, and when we're talking about overcoming some type of infidelity, right? That the person who created the injury or the person who covered up the injury doesn't get to dictate the healing. Here's another example. Let's say that somebody had 3 kids and they were a really good parent to the youngest 2 kids, but they weren't a good parent to the first kid. So then now the youngest 2 kids get upset because the oldest kid doesn't reverence mama and daddy in the same way, but you ain't never been cussed out. You ain't never had all these things that happen. And I think that's why we need the professional, because what we should not encourage anybody to do is that I should not have to bury that I have been injured in order to make you guys feel comfortable. And if I was the one who was injured, you should not get to tell me that I need to get over it because you are uncomfortable with the conversation.
I agree. That's a good point. That's a good point.
And I think going into, go ahead, Dan.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, I was going to say, I think going into it saying, I want to heal, but be aware that this healing process, and I tell people in sessions all the time, when you're coming in, it may not be a fun, in fact, it's probably not going to be a fun process. I want you to know that going into it, so that when people have the choice to say, I'm willing to engage in this process, or I'm not willing to engage in this process. Because if I'm willing to engage, I am more likely to sit there through that discomfort. I'm more likely to know that it's coming so that I can be prepared not to run out.
That's good. And so we're talking about family. We're talking about healing. We're talking about discomfort, which really kind of gets to another question in this area of family dynamics. It was asked about, how do I deal with family, right? So here's this other question. It says, when family gatherings frequently turn into stressful situations, And the person's asking this is clearly asking because they want to find a way to change this. How can we shift those dynamics to be more supportive and enjoyable? And I guess they're saying without me just ghosting the family. It's like I'm ready to just find me another family. But before I do that, I'd like some advice on when we all get together. It's just a matter of time before something stressful pops off. How do I don't know if they're saying how do I as a healed person, as a person who's trying to bring people together as a peacemaker, but what can I do to make this dynamic more supportive without just ghosting the whole family?
Y'all need to share this with somebody because this is good conversation right here.
So I'll let somebody else start. I got some things to say, but I'll save mine.
One of the first things that came to my mind was, is it stressful just for you? Because if your other parts of your family find that situation the norm, you could be the outlier who thinks it's stressful. And depending on how you live life now compared to how you lived life then,
wow.
Only reason you think it's stressful because you pulled yourself out the environment. Wow. Had you stayed where you stayed, you too would think this is the norm. So that's some things you got to think about, whoever wrote this question, because man, because you could be the only one. And if you're the only one, then it's unlikely that the group is going to change just for you.
Wait. So what I hear you say is that you can be in a crazy family, but they only crazy to you. The rest of them think they sane. And so you stress because they get together and they have a good time and then they get into it and then they scream and they fuss and they cuss and then they leave. And then when they see each other again, they hug like nothing ever happened. It's stressful for you, but not for them.
That's just how Uncle Joe is. That's just who he is. And you hug his neck and you just keep going the next time.
Now, so what I would say is this,
my God,
because I agree with that. So if it's important for me to engage with them, then what I'm going to do is that I am going to have a strategic entrance and exit, because I know they good as long as it's daytime. I know at night that oil go get to flowing, and I know they go get to flipping them tables, and I know that does not work for me. So what I'm going to do is very intentionally make sure that I do not spend the night there so that I have a place to go. I'm going to have me a hotel room. I'm going to have me another place. And about the time it get dark and they start pulling out that hard liquor, that dark liquor, I'm going to take my kids and I'm going to go out and head out, because I'm not built for that anymore.
And then you're going to have to be comfortable with the family. Watch this. Saying things like, "Oh, you think you too good to be around." Because now I know how family work. Now you talking about taking your kids and going home at a certain time because we doing normal stuff. Because I heard Ralph say they think that's normal. Mm-hmm. And so when you start leaving the normal stuff, now you're gonna have to be able to deal with the way you are perceived in the family.
I'm gonna tell you, if you that person, they already think you sadistic. So go ahead and leave.
That part.
So go ahead and leave. I'm gonna tell you this. I feel like this is one of.
Are we saying that ghosting may be an option for them?
I'm saying this.
And that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing maybe the second part of this you don't need to worry about, or he don't need to worry about. Ghosting may be an option.
I think you have to own sometimes that just because we are related does not make us family. And when you are dangerous to me, and this is, I think about this right here. When my father passed, right? It is the last time that I have been nuck if you buck, okay? Because the truth of it is, I think you also have to know what's in you.
Yeah.
And what happened is that I messed around and I stayed after my family left. And some of my siblings got to acting out.
Yeah.
And because that's still in me, and I couldn't figure out a way to escape safely, I was out there almost acting as rough as that, because I literally had to be like, oh, I know you think I'm Sadiddy, but I don't want you to forget, baby, I still got them hands too. And that was because if
don't let my present misconstrue who my past.
Don't let my misconstrue because I think if you know, Lakeisha said, "Do you know my people?" And I think you got to be smart enough to know. And in that moment, I realized that I would never again in my life put myself in that situation with those siblings, because the truth of it is that they didn't care if they went to jail, and I did care if I went to jail, and that I understood that once they got that they like me until they get that liquor in them. And when they don't, then everything from our childhood comes up. And I was like, baby. And so I have never put myself in that situation again, because I understand two things. I understand that, number one, I don't want to be that person anymore. But I also understand that backed into a corner, I am as ignorant as they are.
Yeah.
But I got way more to lose. So I don't care. I'm willing to say this. My family be like, why don't you rock and why don't you do this? Because the truth of it is, you don't like this version of me. And if you push this version of me, that's what Ralph was saying. You don't like this version of me. And if you push this version of me enough, you're going to get the old version of me. And again, to Ralph's point, here's the difference. Now I'm driving back up here crying, telling the Lord, I'm sorry. I can't believe I acted like that.
They done went home and sleep the liquor off and wonder why you didn't call them to talk the next day.
Come on.
Yeah.
And so I think some of it is that you got to say, that I have a destiny, I have a call, and I have a purpose. And I don't care how much I like y'all, I'm not going to dishonor God, and I'm not going to destroy my life trying to get you to think I still see you as family.
So you might have to ghost sections
of your family.
Dealing with family.
Absolutely.
Or at least ghost part of their behavior, like Pastor Sean said. I'm good during the daytime. I'm good. Those are those healthy boundaries where you can still have a relationship with someone without ghosting them, but without violating your own boundaries.
I think this is a good point. Hold on. She said, wait, where is it right here? She said, they push you and then they judge you. folks will do something and then you will respond, and then they'll judge you for responding the way that you shouldn't have responded, but they kept acting until you responded that way. Now, we are responsible for our own behaviors. But I think that's the reason that we had to say there may be times that you have to ghost a portion of the family. That was a good question. Now, y'all made me see that different.
Let me add something to this that I want to say. And I think that this is something that sometimes believers overlook. It is dangerous to put yourself in a situation with a family member that has a demon designed to destroy you. And I think that's the thing that we ignore sometimes. That the enemy wants to use somebody in your family to destroy you. And because you keep going, that's my sister, not that somebody that is influenced by the devil that actually hates me, that actually would like to see me fail at everything I have. And we keep putting ourselves in these situations and saying that we're being a good person. No, we're actually being foolish. We're being foolish to keep doing that. I don't care if you got the same mama and daddy. I don't care if you grew up in the same house. If somebody shows you that they don't like you, that they don't like this version of you, and if truth be told, they didn't like the other version of you either. And the enemy will use your need for them to destroy you. And I'm telling you, you better have wisdom enough to say, the Bible says God will give you people for your life. So I will believe God for some new brothers, some new sisters, some new aunties, uncles. But what I'm not going to do is destroy my destiny with people who actually can't stand me to begin with.
Yep. That's good. That's good.
Yep.
Woo, there was some good questions. Go ahead, Nietzsche.
I was just gonna say, for in case it's not as deep as these things right here, because it sounds like it's some deep stuff. Sometimes it's just a matter of giving a different perspective. Like if your family is always criticizing, if that's the stress you're talking about, or they're just kind of sometimes you're like, you know what? Let's implement a new thing where we give compliments when we first see somebody. Like sometimes I know everybody's family is not that far gone real deep over there, because my family don't typically have all that stuff going on. But there can be some stressful things. And sometimes it's a matter of, I remember we'll walk up and I go, y'all know, instead of sitting around doing this, how about we go for a family walk? Or the next time we're going to all play games to avoid. So I come prepared with games, or somebody comes prepared with games, so that we don't get into the whatever, you know what I'm saying? So sometimes it's just a different perspective as well. I agree with everything y'all said. I just wanted to bring it back to the other side a little bit.
You wanted to let us know for the relationships that didn't need a cutoff.
Right. Sometimes bring a different perspective.
So I think the takeaways are that if it's really toxic and really dangerous, you need to ask God for some new people.
Yep.
I think the next takeaway is that if you know that there are certain things where people get triggered, because in the truth, in a lot of families, it is when the liquor drinking starts.
Mm-hmm.
When we move from beer to E&J, then now we about to have a problem. Then the wisdom is you have to leave before that, right? And then the third option is that if we have a family that we just normalize saying, "Oh, girl, you show is fat," that we implement a new rule. When we see each other, we're going to give a prize for the people who can give the most compliments during the thing. We're going to play some games. We're going to structure it differently.
Yeah, because you know what's shocking to me now? And this is no slight at anybody in my family. You can call me if you get offended by it, and I'll tell you how true it is. But here's the thing. I'm around a lot of people who don't use profanity anymore. And so when I'm around my family and they're laughing and talking and using profanity, it always is kind of jarring to me at first, you know, and it takes me aback. I'm like, oh, are we finna fight? Because nowadays, if I hear somebody using profanity at each other, they're angry. But that's not the case with them. And so your illustration about coming out of a situation and going back into one, and you being the one who see it stressful, but they don't, that was eye-opening for me. That really is the truth. And I even
this show night tonight, ain't it?
This relationship 101 was for me. So yeah, that's really good.
But I do think that's a good point, because whenever I'm going to be around my family,
sure,
I literally I can see myself do it. I actually move my body differently. Like I start to relax in of that I need to be like, oh, I'm about to go. They about to be cussing. They go use MF. They go say all of this different stuff. And nobody's about to fight, right? Because in my life now, if somebody starts using words like that, I'm like, wait,
that's a hostile situation.
That's a hostile situation.
Yes.
That's why I think, Ralph, I think you really do have the comment of the night is that it's only crazy to you because you've been delivered.
Yeah.
It used to be your normal too.
Okay. We got a little more to go. These two have been good.
We did three. We did 3 questions, right?
We've been in 2 sections. We've been four questions in 2 sections.
Okay.
So we're gonna move because there's a couple questions that we need to ask about marriage and romantic relationships. People wanted to kind of know a little bit about this, and so one of these questions. Let's see where we're gonna start here tonight. It's about 5 or 6 of them. Let's see. The question says. All right. Here's one. It says, "What practical steps can we, I guess the person asks it says, what practical steps can I take if resentment, or if I'm building resentment, I guess, over unmet expectations?" I'm assuming based on these questions, these expectations have been verbalized. They're not just in the mind. Let's assume that. And now it has started to build in our relationship. I guess the resentment is starting to build. Because
resentment has started, unmet expectations has started to build in our relationship.
Yep.
I think we need to end with the counselor, okay? Because she gonna send us to therapy, and so I'm gonna start, and then Ralph is gonna give us something reasonable and moderate, right?
They want practical steps. What can they do?
Practical steps. In our relationship, we are very direct, right? That we don't do a bunch of beating around the bush over here. So even to my adult children, I have said, I need you to know, I do not like when you do X, Y, and Z to me. And I need you to understand that as much as I love you, if you continue to do this, I am going to minimize our time together. Now, I think that when it's a marriage, you have to say, I want to be with you until we both go home to be with Jesus. That is my sincere desire. But I need you to know that I feel like you are ignoring how important this is to me. And if you continue to ignore how important this is to me, it says to me that I am not important to you. I need us to work on how we're going to fix this so that my solution doesn't become an exit of this relationship.
And what do you do if they say, I agree with you, I'll do better? Because a lot of women I talk to say that that's what they get, and they hear that over and over and over and over. So if you are in a relationship and you're saying that, and the person is saying they're going to get better and better and they don't, what are you, 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 10 years?
This is where I think that women often make a mistake.
Okay, talk to them.
This is where I think women make a mistake.
Help them out.
If you tell me you're going to be better in the area, right? Then what I want to know is, what is that going to look like? So for example, let's say I've been trying to get my man to go to therapy and he won't go to therapy.
Okay.
I'm going to say to him, I believe Nitra is a great therapist and she could help us. And I believe that if you value this relationship, in the next 30 days, you need to schedule us an appointment with Nitra. If you do not schedule us an appointment with Nitra, you have communicated to me that you do not care if our relationship changes, and I will begin to prepare for what that means. And I think a lot of times for women, what women do is that they're like,
they be afraid he ain't gonna do it. I'm just telling you. A lot of women be like, I ain't gonna get, because I tell you, when I talk to women, they say to me, well, that sounds Pastor Edwin, that sounds like I'm giving him an ultimatum. Sometimes you might need to do that. Is what it sounds like to me, what you're saying.
What I'm gonna say is this. What I'm gonna say is this. I refuse to be in any kind of relationship with a spouse, with a child, with a friend who is unwilling to do work to make the relationship healthy. I am not going to keep spending my life talking to the Lord about the same thing. I'm not going to keep calling my friends crying about the same thing. And we say this all the time. The superpower really that fixed our relationship, I said to somebody today, I know people who still fighting over the same issue. Baby, if we go have a fight now, it's going to be new. What I'm not going to be doing, I'm not having no fights in 2025 that we was having in 2015. We are either going to fix this thing, or I'm going to believe God to give me somebody else to live my last days with. But what I'm not going to keep doing is begging you to love me better. I'm not going to do that. That's why I said you needed to start with me.
That's a song, ain't it?
Baby,
that's a song title. I ain't gonna. How would you say?
I'm not even spending my life begging you to love me better. I
ain't gonna beg you to love me better.
I will not beg.
There it is.
That's a t-shirt,
baby. I will not beg. And if you say you love me, if the truth of it is that in every relationship, relationships that work, healthy relationships with friends, kids, whoever it is, everybody has to do work to make the relationship. And I think we have too many women who have been counseled in Raggedy Tail Women's Ministries that have been told that it is the measure of their faith whether a man changes. And I am telling you, it is not my faith whether you change. If you care, get your tail up and do something to show that you care.
This the mic.
Now, tell us how you really feel.
Baby. No, because we have so many women that their self-esteem is so shot because they spent 10 years begging somebody to love them better. And for church women, I'm not only begging you to love me better, but I am now tying my faith to the fact that you don't love me better because I ain't prayed enough. How come you don't get your tail up and pray if you care about this relationship?
Okay. Now, what the counselor got to say?
Nothing. No. No, I really think she said everything that was. I think she was right. The only thing I would
Say
add
it in
to
a
that.
counselor voice. Say it in a counselor voice.
Okay, so the first step is to make sure that we express our feelings genuinely and authentically, so that they can hear us and know the degree to which what they are doing hurts us. What I hear a lot of times, women don't actually. People, I won't even say women, don't actually express the degree that they are serious, and the other person is thinking that they're playing about it. You know, I told him he got to do better. I mean, I've been telling him, but then when you came in therapy, you said, I am crying every night and I am depressed and I'm this. He needs to know the actions are impacting you to such a degree that you're thinking you're about to leave, or you're about to cheat, or whatever the situation is, right? They need to know. Then also, like Pastor Sean said, we're not begging people, and I'm a therapist that I don't think you should threaten people unless this is where you're ready to go.
Right.
So I'm not actually against ultimatums in the sense of, hey, if you continue to do X, I am not going to continue to stay in this relationship. That's an ultimatum, but it's also saying this is what I'm not willing to accept, and this is what I am willing to accept. Ultimatums are not. It's been given a bad name, but the reality is, if you cheat on me one more time, I'm not going to stay with you. That is an ultimatum, but it's a reality. You don't throw threats out there if you're not willing to follow through. I'm going to leave you if you do this again and you keep staying. That's when it loses the power. That's when it loses the strength of what you're saying, because now you violated your own boundary. You said you were going to leave if you cheat again. He cheated again, and now you just going to take it to the altar. That saying you're going to leave, he doesn't believe you anymore. And in fact, he has more strength or more audacity to go and do it again.
And I think that is so important. As an educator, one of the things they stress to us as a school teacher is that you don't tell kids you're going to do something if they do something again and you don't follow through. I learned that as a parent. No matter how mad I got at my kids, I didn't say things to them like, if you do that again, I'm going to knock your head off. Because even if you say things like that, even if or even something not as bad, if you do that again, you're going to be grounded for 2 weeks. I'm not going to ground you for 2 weeks. I'm punishing me. So I was very careful about what I said to them, because I wanted them to know that if I actually said it, I was going to follow through. And what I find is that a lot of people, not just in marriage relationships, but in marriage relationships, people will say they're going to do something and then they won't follow through on it. And when you don't follow through on it, you're literally teaching someone how to teach you. And so I think that is important. So I think people have to temper their, if you don't do this, I'm going to do X. Because in reality, they say that, but they're not even prepared or ready to do the X. They're not even ready to do something. If you say something like, well, if you don't do X, Y, and Z for me, then I'm not going to cook for you anymore. Or they say things like that. And then what ends up happening is they don't do it. And then you still end up cooking for them again.
So it's interesting. Bernard says, I believe people that believe in God really take marriage vows seriously. I don't know that I agree with that, but it's a position.
Well, he says, I believe
people that believe in God really take marriage vows seriously, but those who don't believe in God really don't take vows seriously. I don't believe that. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of pastors get divorced, which is weird. I'm not sure why you think that's weird when the scripture, Jesus literally said that people get divorced for the hardness of their heart, right? And it also has nothing to do with cheating or abuse. And I would also say that because I have the opportunity to counsel a lot of first ladies, just because you ain't heard about the abuse and the cheating don't mean it hasn't happened.
That's true.
Because I actually know lots of women who are getting divorced right now that never told anybody that they were being abused, never told anybody they were being mistreated, but they were being mistreated because they were trying to protect for the sake of the church, which is what I have issue with.
And you may know someone who got divorced that had nothing to do with cheating or abuse, but that's not everybody's story.
Yes. And so let me tell you what I think is a large problem. I'm 53. I've been married 30 years, and I'm watching a lot of people get divorced at this stage. And I'm going to tell you what I really believe, including pastors. Let me tell you what I believe the problem is. I believe we have too many people who believed a prayer at the altar without practical skills was going to change their marriage.
Yes.
And I think that there is something, I keep saying this to you guys. The deeper I get into 50, the less I'm willing to tolerate a life that doesn't look like what God says. So, okay, when our kids are little, I ignore those things and I think they're going to work on them. And then our kids get to be teenagers and I'm still having the same conversation with you, right? And there is something about realizing that you've been married 25 years to somebody who is not willing to do any work on the relationship, that a lot of people just go, you know what, God, I need you to forgive me, but this cannot be the best that you have for me. And I think that, I think the problem is that we look at relationships. I cannot tell y'all how many people I know who put up fancy pictures on social media who actually can't stand each other. So what we've done is we think that because
in some cases they don't even sleep in the same room.
That right.
They live in the same house, don't sleep in the same room. But you see all their social media pictures, and you think they are Beyonce and Jay-Z somewhere.
So we think that because people are showing up at church and they wearing, and the pastor and the first lady got matching outfits, we don't know the inside of people relationships, and we also don't know how many people are suffering in silence until they aren't.
That's true.
Until they aren't. Now, Christy says, how do you fix damage from that? Everybody needs to hear this. I am responsible for my own healing, and God is a healer. But I cannot repair a relationship with Edwin that he is unwilling to participate in the healing journey. And I think that that's the problem. You can't fix a relationship with a sibling that won't acknowledge that the relationship needs to be fixed.
That's true.
You cannot fix a relationship with a parent or a spouse or a friend that will not acknowledge that we are not in a good space. And even if it's normal for you, it is hurting me.
Go ahead. I think the definition of abuse is too narrow. Like people say that she wasn't even being abused. Just because you didn't hit me upside my head doesn't mean I wasn't being abused.
You better say that.
And so if your only definition is I'm getting black eyes or you're withholding money from me in some way, that's the only definition. But if I'm constantly asking you for things and you're refusing to meet me in that is abusive to me mentally. I mean, that's why you get those women, those men that come in and you're like, I've been married, and now their self-esteem is through the ground, but they've never been physically touched. So I think we have to expand that definition, and that's not like an excuse for people to leave. That's a reality. People are literally being emotionally abused and manipulated all the time through religion, I might add.
Yes.
And it is very much abusive. And so because a person believes in God doesn't mean that their mind is renewed, doesn't mean that they have worked on any soul issues. They simply believe that it's a God out there. They simply believe that a higher power exists. That doesn't mean that they've done any work to renew their mind, as Romans tells us to do. So I think we have to shift our definition from abuse to broaden that to, are you hurting this person? And then the other part is to recognize that just because two people confess Jesus doesn't mean that they've done any soul work to actually know how to be married or even have a healthy relationship.
And to Chrissy, let me say to Chrissy's point, I don't know if she was on here earlier, but we talked about like, what do you do when people acknowledge that they're doing something wrong and they say they're going to change, but then they don't? That's when you have to have those boundaries. And you talked a little bit about that. I just wanted to say to her question, you have to begin to set those boundaries, and those boundaries have to be built in. What are you as an individual willing to accept? What is your limit? And then you have to communicate what that is. And then if it's violated, you have to then really, like a parent would be, to follow through on that consequence.
And I also think that when Nitra talks about we need to broaden abuse, I think that also I think you make such a good point about manipulation through religion, because I have literally had women talk to me, right, that don't go to our church, tell me what their husband is doing to them, which is 100% abuse. And I say to them, when you talk to your pastor, did you tell your pastor all of this? And they say, I don't want to embarrass my husband.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. If you're cussing me out, if Strick was cussing me out every day, and when I go sit down with Ralph and Nitra, I don't tell them. I say, oh, it's a little bad, and sometimes he talks bad to me, but I don't tell them every day he calling me out my name. Then they're actually giving me bad advice because they're giving me bad advice based on an incomplete story.
Yes.
So if I'm going to go and get help, I
Yes.
have to be willing to tell the entire truth. I have to be willing to say, yes, he takes care of me, but he gets mad and won't speak to me for a week.
I think it was the prophet Usher Raymond. He
I
said,
was thinking that.
if you're going to tell it, you
Gotcha.
got to tell it all.
You got to.
Oh,
And
Now,
I-
listen, I have had situations where I've worked with people for years, and then they would come in and say, well, there's this one part, and that changes everything.
Right.
That one part changes everything. And if I had known that one part, we would probably not even be in this situation 2 years later. And so I think you do have to come in with the entire truth, the whole truth, and being willing to work from that perspective of honesty.
And you're really not helping. You are not helping the relationship. There is a difference between getting on Facebook and telling all your business.
Right.
But
Mhm.
if you're sitting in front of wise counsel, no, I love what Danielle Scott said.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going to the doctor and only telling them that you have a twinge in your side when you actually have sharp pains and nausea.
Right.
What are we supposed to do
Right.
with that?
Right.
Because you made me think that it was gas, but you actually having a heart attack, friend. I mean, you got to tell the whole truth. Now, somebody asked, should you ever go back to
It
a
was Miss Hogan. She asked, I want to make sure we get back to that. She asked that question. She said, should you ever go back after abuse if the spouse changed? And I'll let you answer, but I'll say this. If the abuse, whatever it was bad enough to leave, you need to make sure there's been real change. There's been sustained change before you go back, because I won't say everybody, but a lot of people, especially if it's physical abuse, it could be emotional too. Some of those people are so manipulative. I won't even use everybody's famous word, narcissist, but some of those people are so manipulative that they can change in order to get you back, because in reality, what they don't like is the fact that you left and they lost control. And when they get you back, there have been people, women, men, a lot of women I know who have lost their life because they went back. So I tell people, if it was bad enough for you to leave, you got to really make sure. You know, I use the example, you could eat warmed up McDonald's French fries, but why would you? Why would you do that?
And
So you got to be careful in going back to abusive situation. You could go back, but why would you?
I think that this is so important. And I think that we need to teach people, but I want to say again, especially women, that when Jesus died on that cross for you, it was not for you to have a husband who mismanaged you. In
Amen.
fact, the call of the husband is to love the wife like Christ loves the church. Now, this is what I say, and this is my standard. I think that there is a difference between mutual toxic behavior and abuse. Okay? So if you look back at me and Strick when we was in our 20s, we cussed each other out, but I ain't never been scared of him. Don't play. I ain't never been scared of him. I've never been afraid of him.
Touch my pearls.
Oh my God, because it's a shame now that we would do that. But I've never been afraid of him. But the truth of it is that I've been married to Edwin almost 31 years. If he haul off and punch me in my face today, baby, I'm leaving and I'm done. And we can't have no talking to come back to that, because we don't get to come back from that. And I think the thing is that we keep teaching, especially women, that the scripture to love others excludes ourselves. When Jesus said to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So what I say is that if a 22, I just told Keedron this today, I probably, in all honesty, did some things in my early 20s 22, 23, that if he had shook the fool out of me, people would have understood. But he didn't.
And I didn't because I was such a great guy. I didn't because no matter what someone does, you don't have the right to shake the fool out of somebody. If it's that bad, you remove yourself from the situation. You go get help. And I think people have to see it both that way. You can't, because if you could have, there was some things you could have shook me for, but you would have been wrong to shake me because we don't. And that was kind of what Bernard's question was about. What do you look for if you're trying to find a person to marry? Because it seems like people change for good or for bad. People do change because people grow. But there are some fundamental things that are a yes, and there are some fundamental things that are a no. We teach all kids in kindergarten to keep your what? Hands, feet, and other objects to yourself. You never have a right to physically assault another person you're in a relationship with. You just don't. I mean, and that goes back and forth. And so, you don't talk to a person. My idea was I don't talk to my wife in a manner that I wouldn't want someone to talk to my daughter in. I mean, there are some fundamental things that you can look for in relationships, whether or not she likes going to the movies as much now as she acted like she did when we was dating. That's irrelevant. People change and grow, right?
And whether you like reading books with me,
I knew it was
baby,
going to
that's
be.
right. Reading books with me
I
as
knew it
much
was
as
coming.
you pretended like you did when we got together. Now you don't even want me to read 2 paragraphs to you. But I think we have got to help the body discern
Yes.
between what is relationship things that we work out and what are unhealthy, unsafe things that are detrimental
Habits
to our
and
life.
behaviors.
And I don't think we have done a good job in the church
Yep.
for that.
I agree.
There is a difference between I'm mad at my husband because he don't put the toilet seat down, and my husband make all the money and he won't buy me sanitary napkins. Baby, that's not the same kind of conversation. And I think we're treating those things as though they're equal, and they're not equal.
Listen, there's another question in this
Okay.
section I want us to get to because it goes along with what you just your example. And here it was. It said it like this. It says, "What is the healthiest way?" Let me find it. What is it? Here it is. What's the healthiest way to address repeated conflicts about finances without damaging the emotional intimacy in our marriage? Because we know that if people get divorced, there's a couple things they end up getting divorced for: infidelity and finances. And so this verse says, what is the healthiest way to address this repeated conflict? Maybe the conflict is not that I make all the money and I won't buy you sanitary. Maybe I make all the money and I spend all the money, or we both make money and I'm a spender and you're a saver. What is, and I know there's multitudes of ways to work through this, but their question is, how do we do this without damaging the emotional intimacy? Because the reality of it is for a lot of men, when they get married, especially if it's a person who they love, it isn't just about sex. I know people think that that's the case for men, and it is a lot of times when you just out there in the streets trying to just do your thing. But when you say, hey, this is the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, marriage isn't just about having guilt-free sex. And so for a lot of men, when you start to have these marital kind of conflicts where finances is concerned, whether you're the issue or she's the issue, the emotional, not just sexual, the emotional intimacy does get damaged, because emotional intimacy isn't just a physical act, it's that connectedness. So what do?
Man, this was good. Y'all still ought to be sharing this. It's some good stuff happening up in here, okay?
I'm gonna go with Mom on this one. The question it's the question wording, because you don't get to control damaging of the emotional intimacy, because somebody else could be injured by the integrity and honesty of what you have to say. So I think you confront it. I think you got to teach people how you want to be treated. I think that if you've shown me that you're going to repeatedly create financial stresses for our family, then I'm also now questioning, do you care enough about our family that we are successful? Because if it's a man, or if it's a woman, you want to make sure the family's good. And if you're willing to take this money and to do X, Y, and Z at the expense of the family, finances is just part of it. I'm looking deeper now because I'm like, do you even care? And I think the emotional part, I'm going to say what I got to say in a very loving, caring way, but I got to look at that person and I got to believe who they are. And if they can't work with me to walk out a path exchange, okay, you work and you pay bills here, but this money's coming to the account and I need to manage it so the family's good. And if they like, I'm unwilling to do that, I don't care. You got to really find your place where you're going to draw that line at, in my opinion, because if they have, because this question says repeated conflicts. Now, I don't know how deep those conflicts are, but we struggling to pay mortgage and you out there gambling, and I don't know where I'm going to live next month. Then at some point, I'm about to draw this line. Like, you keep doing this, I won't be here.
I understand that. If in that case, I think about it in terms of what if it's not a struggle of paying bills? You got two people, both high wage earners.
Mm-hmm.
They manage all of their household bills from one account, but maybe they decide they want to save for investment, and one person doesn't save as much as they're supposed to save. Maybe they're supposed to save $2,000 a month, and they save $1,500, and they have a conversation about it. It's repeated, so they're not struggling to live, but there's still conflict there. And I am not sure how I would not have the emotional intimacy damaged by that.
Right.
So to me, I don't even know that it's a bad question, in the sense that if we have financial conflicts and it's ongoing, I don't want to put my head in your lap and lay up and watch Netflix. I want to figure out why it is that we can't do what we agreed on.
Right.
Now, maybe
that's
an immaturity
no,
on my
I agree,
part.
because I think we're still having the same thing. We're still layered. Because this is what I think. Are we talking a conflict, right? Are we talking betrayal, or are we talking abuse?
Because they say repeated conflict.
Because I think repeated conflicts become betrayal and abuse. Now, are we talking that? Are we saying that it irritates me because you're a bigger tipper than I am? Are we talking that, right? Are we talking I irritate you because I buy too many books, but I don't put any of our goals at risk, right? If that's the case, then I think, like in our case, what we did was we had separate accounts for our personal spending so that we didn't have to see that engagement together.
Except even in that, there were times we had separate accounts, right? Our household was never in jeopardy, but you would spend your money on your books or whatever you wanted. And then because I saved mine, you would ask me for some of mine. Now people would go, well, as a good husband, you should give it to you. And I would, but it did used to irritate me that we both had an allotment of money to spend, that you would spend yours and then ask me for mine. And so until I said, and again, I was one of those people who just kind of worked through things or whatever, until I said that to you. But once I said it to you a couple of times, then you was like, oh, okay. And then you was like, no, hold on. And then you was like, okay, that's fine. And then I don't know if you just still overspent yours and didn't ask me for mine, but you stopped asking for that allotment. Like it was yours. Because I used to feel like you counted it. If we both got $200 a week, I felt like you counted yours as $250.
I did.
and that was irritating.
I did, but here is the thing, and this is where I would say here's the onus for you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Is that the truth of it is that had you said no earlier, I would have stopped. But because you didn't say no.
Right. And I think that goes back to bad teaching. Because the teaching was, as the husband, even if you don't spend your money and your wife wants it, you give it to her. But I actually had the right to say to you, no. We both had $200 for the week. If you overspent and didn't budget, that's on you. But that seemed very cruel to say, when I had it and I probably wasn't going to spend it.
But here's my point. And I say this, everybody's heard the funny story about how we got a second dog because I didn't believe that Edwin really meant no. Here's the challenge that Edwin has to own that for a large part of our relationship, he would say no just to say no. So he trained me that his first no didn't mean no. He trained me for that.
So I actually didn't train you. Let's help the people.
No,
I
you
actually
trained
didn't
me.
train you. What I did is I said no, and then you didn't believe the no, and then in order for me to try to be a good husband, I gave in. I go back to the erroneous teaching part. So yes. So just like if you tell somebody you're going to do something and you don't do it, you end up giving them, what was the word that you used? More audacity to do it again. So I
reinforced.
Yes,
you reinforced her behavior, which is essence training.
Audacity.
So
to ask me for more money.
I didn't even know. I didn't even know he felt that way about it. Because baby, listen, we talk all the time about how people get in dysfunctional dances.
Yeah.
I thought that was our dance. I was going to ask him for something. He was going to say no. I was going to say, please, Strick, come on, do it for me. He was going to say no. And then I was going to say, you know, you really want to. He was going to give me the money and I was going to go to the store. I thought that was the dance that we had. I thought that's what we were doing.
Y'all remember that story in the Bible where the woman said, he went to the righteous judge, and the righteous judge, the unrighteous judge, and he said, look, I don't revere God, I don't revere no man. He said, but I'm gonna give you what you want, least you beat me black and blue.
But I think you need to tell the truth. You need to tell the truth that I didn't withhold affection to you. I didn't act out. I literally thought, and if you ask our kids, especially Kanan and Tay, would say to you that was the thing that he used to just say no. He would say no. And y'all have been with me. I'll ask Edwin to do something right now that he know he go do. I'll say, Edwin, will you cook me some eggs and toast? He'll be like, nah. And then he'll go in the kitchen and cook it. He gotta own that part of this mess he made, he created. Now I'm trying to fix it now, but he don't own that he did that.
The other question was
I want to say this.
The next question was
that I want to say that it's unfair. This is also the thing that I think we need to say. That many times we train people in bad behavior.
That's true.
And then get upset with them
right.
over the dance that we train them in.
You're right.
And I think that
if
that
you
is
build
why,
a monster, you have to retrain a monster.
And I think that is why you have to be honest about what it is that you own and what you want. So now what happens between us, I'll say, okay, if you really don't want to cook me eggs, you don't have to. And then he'll say, I don't mind, I'm gonna do it. He still does it today. It's just in a different way. He need to own it. He need to go to therapy and find out why he need to say no when he mean yes.
Because I really still have a deep-seated, how do you say? I have a deep-seated belief, I guess is what you would call it, stronghold, if you will, that if I have the ability to do it, I should do it even if I don't want to.
Except we all know you well enough to know
that I want to
that
do
when you no, that's not what I'm gonna say. Is that when you really don't want to do something, that's the other thing. That is why it was so confusing for me, because there are times that I want you to do something and you say, here's how we know this is for real. Rashandra, I'm not doing that. Oh, okay. He really mean he ain't doing that. Well, let me go back in here and find somebody else to do it with me. And I think the thing is that I think he has to own that over time, that is something he has done with me. Now, because I know that there are things that bother him, I try not to engage in the same way. But the truth of it is that he still do that no thing.
So what's the healthiest way to address this?
So I actually had some thoughts on that original question of the healthiest way. And I think the first part is to come in with the heart and not the budget. Like I recognize
come in with the what?
Come in with the heart and not the budget.
Oh, okay.
Like, and so acknowledging this has been a source of strain for us. So I want you to know that this is a safe space. And you come in with curiosity as opposed with accusations. Like, so let's look at the patterns. Every time these things happen. Or I notice every month we get to this point and there's no more money, or every month let's look at patterns through whether that's track and spending. Hey, in your family, what happened on payday? Like, just curious, not with judgment or anything, so you can understand why people are responding, because we all know that money oftentimes is related to something a lot deeper than the money. Because you can have millionaires who are scared to spend a dime, and people who got $200 that think they balling out of control, right? So it's not about the amount; it's other things. So kind of trying to come to, hey, we're going to do this together, and it's not me against you; it's us against a goal. And I think saying things like, "What's your goal?" My goal is for us to be able to get this house by December. Your goal is to not change our living the way we currently live in order to get in that house. How can we both get our goals?
Yeah.
And talk about it from a goal perspective, as opposed to you're stopping me from achieving, your spending is keeping us from getting in the house, or your this is keeping, like, no, you don't want us to make these sacrifices that I think we need to make. How can we both move forward so that we don't feel betrayed, even if we get this house, that there is not resentment going into it, or whatever the thing is? That's just an example, but does that make sense?
No,
so like talking from a goals, go ahead.
It make perfect sense. And what I was going to say is that when you say lead with the heart, I'll never forget when Edwin said to me, I need you to know that the reason that it bothers me that you don't pay more attention to money is because I am concerned that if I die, you wouldn't be okay. Then at that point, it was like, oh, this is not a game. He needs to see that I actually can manage money.
And it changed the goal. I mean, it changed the game. Just hearing, oh, he's not being a jerk about my spending. He's thinking about me, and I need to get on. We need to get on the same page.
And then I was like, oh,
That's
but
good.
I also think the other thing is that when you talk about the money with emotions, we also had to work through how differently we grew up with money.
Mm-hmm.
So I was never concerned that there wasn't any more money, where he spent a lot of time being concerned that there wasn't a lot more money. So how we approach money to begin with, and I think in that moment, it was like, oh, he isn't trying to control me. He isn't trying to boss me. He is literally concerned about what would happen if he died first. And then I said, I love him enough to show him that I actually am really good with money, because here is the truth. Because I talk about how he conditioned me. Why did I have to manage my money if he was going to fix it for me?
Mm-hmm.
That was the point. And because Edwin also used to be, I say this all the time, Edwin is like somebody grandma that you think she out of money and she go pull the mattress up and she got $10,000 on the mattress and you thought Big Mama didn't have no money. So the other thing is that I also felt like some of our no dance was the way that he also always made sure we didn't spend everything. That's why it felt like part of the dance to me. So it was like, so for me, it was like, oh, if he says no 3 times, he really means that that's not in the budget. We can't do it. But if he say no 2 times, he figuring out how to make it work. If he say no once and smile and give me the money, he really wanted to do it. And that is why communication is so important.
All them other
communications. But can you not see in your own life how you were showing up in that way?
Now that you pointed out, sure.
Now that
Listen, go ahead, Pastor Ralph. Go ahead.
No, I was just thinking, you also got to look at, sometimes in a relationship, somebody may handle the finances, somebody may not. And so if you're not the one looking at the money all the time and you're out spending it, but you're the one paying the credit card, paying the mortgages, the whole perspective could be different. And it's not that the person doesn't care, they're unaware. So what Nietzsche's talking about, leading with the heart, will be important there. And then sometimes the landscape changes. So in a situation where once going out to get X, Y, and Z done was perfectly fine, but there's a change in finances, and now doing X, Y, and Z is different because it costs more, you got to be careful how you navigate that. Because if somebody has been accustomed to doing X, Y, and Z every month. And now because of changing finances, that looks different, but now it's bothering you. I think that was those some other things that I had noted down because you're used to that. It's habit. But now habit, what once was a habit accepted is no longer a habit accepted because of changing money.
Yeah.
And so you got to be careful because I know now people are getting laid off, things like that with jobs. And so if you're going to communicate that, I think communicate up front, like, hey, I know we used to do this. I'm good with you doing this. Let's see how we navigate this. Only because there have been a change in the landscape of what our money looks like, because that's a real reality for people. And it's easy to be offended if you're the one looking at the money and somebody's not.
So I hear Nietzsche saying the healthiest way to address the conflict is to lead with the heart, is to get an understanding. Because when I realized how much money stress you had, I think you would say that I really changed.
Yeah, you did.
I really changed because I never knew he was that stressed about money. And then I was like, oh, I don't want you to be stressed out. Hold on. Matter of fact, hold my root beer and I'll go out here and make some money because you ain't got to be stressed out like this.
So we all, therapists get a bad rep for talking about feelings a lot. This is actually the time when feelings are good, because if you share how something makes you feel or how you feel about a situation, people who genuinely care about you care about that part. So if you say, I am stressed when we are spending this much, because I care about you, I now respond differently. Now, feelings are not supposed to move you to the point of now we can't have, Sprite because that's too much money. It's not supposed to control us, but it is supposed to go, oh, he's stressed out. I heard him say that. Now I respond to that differently. So I think that's where feelings are actually good, to be able to say, oh, and then let's say Pastor Sean said, you say, I'm stressed out about money. And she says, well, I feel neglected because we never get to go out. Okay. How can I make sure that you feel loved while not stressing myself out about this money? Now it becomes us. This is us against this problem of how can Sean get to go out and have a good time and I don't have to be stressed about money. It can even become a challenge that we actually embrace. But if it feels like, oh, all he's doing is trying to keep me from going out, or all she's doing is trying to spend my money, then it's you two against each other, as opposed to, oh, now that we have this clear understanding of what's going on, we approach it from a very different perspective of, oh, how can we have fun together without spending all this money? Because like Ralph said, something has changed or our goals are different or whatever. And I think just that understanding piece is huge.
You guys are really smart. Our listeners are really enjoying this conversation. We have one or two more questions that I want us to get to. One more question dealing with relationship, family, and marriage a little bit. We didn't talk about this kind of question last time, and so I put a note to make sure we get it in. And here is this question, and this actually involves whether you're talking about a traditional nuclear family or you're talking about blended families or whatever the case may be. But the question is, how do we handle significant differences in parenting styles without constantly undermining each other? Now, dadgummit, that's a good question. Don't nobody say that's a bad written question.
No, that's a good question.
How do we handle significant difference in parenting style? That could be husband and wife with biological children. It could be husband and wife, both have children they brought in from it. Step kids, whatever the case may be. I think that's a legitimate question. What's the best way to handle it? I know we're going to say communication, but going deeper with that answer that we're going to give, I know, how should people handle this?
So I think when we're not angry, right, we need to sit down in a space outside of our home and we need to talk about what are the non-negotiables for us, right? We can parent differently,
Okay.
but what are non-negotiables for us? Okay.
To add to, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, to add to that, I think starting with like non-negotiables, also, what kind of kids do we want to raise? Starting with kind of their reverse engineering. I want super independent kids, or I want kids who are highly this, because that's going to determine, a lot of, okay, so if we're both agreeing that we want these types of children, what leads to that? Why do you believe that style leads to that?
In mind.
Right. Why do you believe that style is going to get, I want a kid that's, I see you saying highly independent. I don't know why. Okay. So if you want an independent child or an adult growing up, if we're doing everything for them, are we going to be able to get that person to that independence that you say you want, or that we both say we want? If you're saying, I want somebody who's this way. Okay. So is this behavior going to get that person in the end to that thing? So I say, starting with what values, what kind of person, kids are we trying to raise?
What if you got somebody who in one person says, and I know they probably should have had this conversation before, but let's say they didn't. And they say, well, I want my boys to be highly independent. But I don't necessarily want my daughters to be highly independent. I want them to be independent, but I also want them to know that literally they can come to me for anything. I don't care if they're married or not. But them boys, when they get 21, they need to make this thing work. I mean, people have different reasons for different things. So assuming you have two different people with two different thought processes, it's great if they both say, oh, we both want this and we can work together. But what if they don't? What if they come in and they go, and maybe it's not that it's a chasm between the two, but the idea of how I want to raise my kid is slightly different than how you think we should be doing it. And so because of that, maybe you want your kid to be highly independent, but when I see my daughter in the kitchen and I know that she wants that thing off the counter and she could get up there and get a chair and get it herself, I don't let her. I get it for her. And then you see that and go, she needs to be able to do it on her own. And I'm like, that's my baby girl. She ain't got to do it on her own. So, these are real questions that people have. So I'm just curious to kind of think of it in those terms rather than just they see it as the same and they work together.
No, I think it will be the same thing like the money, where you're going, but let me explain to you why I want the baby girl to get that shelf down, because you're 34 years older than baby girl or 50 or whatever. And in the event that you die or you lose capacity to be able to do all these things, for me, I'm raising a Black woman that I want to know that she knows how to go to the closet and get a ladder to get that thing off the shelf, and she's not going to stand there and fall apart in the event that somebody puts something too high for her. This is why. So again, when you're talking to people who genuinely love you and they hear it from, this is my motivation, I think that has they're going to have a different reaction.
Okay.
Somebody asked, why do I say that you need to be in a space outside of the home? No, it was from this question right here.
Previous question. When you said that they were talking. Oh, okay. Maybe you said it. Okay.
It was this question. Okay. And I said one of the things I believe is that we typically listen better and on our best behavior when we outside our home. We're more likely. There may be things that we would escalate that we probably not gonna escalate sitting in Starbucks drinking a cup of coffee. We gonna actually have to listen and talk and work through it. A lot of our strategy was to have difficult conversations in places where it was hard to act a fool without looking like a fool. That's our thing. And I know that, and here's the thing, people get real sensitive about their kids. Even people who really love each other, even and they
people who share biological
children, feel tight in their chest about their kids, especially when if you feel like if I felt like Strick did something to the boys too hard. Oh, well, I feel some kind of way about that because I'm like, well, that ain't how you treat the girls. So I think, so for me, it's like, when we think about that, that's why for us, it was a neutral space. And, all our kids are grown. Y'all still got little kids, so y'all can chime in last. I'll tell you some of the things that we did. Number one, we had some non-negotiables, okay? Some non-negotiables for things like we didn't cuss at our kids. We didn't get up in their faces. We didn't do things like that, right? We had some non-negotiables. We had some non-negotiables about how we disciplined, right? That you didn't just get to. What a very big thing for Strick was that our kids could not be disciplined with a switch. He was like, that is too much like slavery. It is an absolute no for me. So that's what I mean when I say we had some non-negotiables. And I was like, I ain't never got a whooping with a belt in my life. And then I would say to him, the reason you were so bad is because you kept getting whoopings with belts. If they'd have got a switch into, he'd be like, maybe so, but we don't whoop our kids with switch. So I think the thing that's the non-negotiable for you, you have got to put it on the table. The other thing is that we made an agreement that if we disagree with how one of us handled it, we never addressed it in front of our kids. They never knew that we disagreed.
Yeah, there were times both of us have had to walk away from the situation and just let the other parent do what they do and talk about that later.
And say, I don't like that you did X, and here's why I don't like it. That's why I think the non-negotiables are important, because if you had somebody who yelled in your face and it traumatized you, that may be a different response for somebody, again, like the family thing where everybody yell at everybody and cussing, it's not a big deal. And so, and the other thing that we were just willing to do, we've always kind of acted this way, that whatever is most important to the other person, we're really gonna kind of lean in on that, right? I think the truth be told is that grades in high school were probably a bigger deal to me than they were to Edwin, but he honored that, right? But there were other things that were a bigger deal to Edwin, like if they started a sport, they had to complete the season. That was a bigger deal to him. So you have to talk through what are the bigger deals to us. And then the other thing that we deal with our kids is that we said parents are like teachers. So you better learn what you can get away with in Miss Smith class. You may not be able to get away with in Mr. Smith class. So we had to teach our kids like something like here's a perfect example.
But at the same time, we had to honor, like you talk about those non-negotiables. There were some things that could get away with me. There were some things but there were some things that because I knew it was important to you, I did that to do with me.
Yes. So here would be two quick examples. For me, it is an absolute insult to call somebody a lie or to say, shut up. So Edwin, it wasn't a big deal for him, but he came over to that side and didn't let our kids say that.
To each other
or to anybody else.
Not to us.
Certainly not to us. On the other hand, Strick has always been willing to let the kids play with them a little more than I am. And he taught our kids, he was like, yeah, your mama don't really get down like that. You be talking all that smack and she be done snatch you up. And they had to learn that they could play with Edwin in a way that they could not play with me, because I don't think kids should play like that.
And you mentioned the whole switch thing. That was a really big deal for me, but it wasn't that big deal of you. So you said, okay, fine, we don't whoop them with switches then. We find another way to discipline. So I think it has to be a meeting of the minds on how you're going to do that. And then when you throw in blended families, I think it's even more important, because then sometimes people can feel like, wait a minute, you treating your kid this way, but you're not treating this other kid this way. And there's lots of kind of things that can happen. And when you notice those, I think you have to talk about them, because if you don't talk about them, they can begin to fester.
Yeah, I can even speak to the blended family thing, because we both came in with one child and both kids thought the whole world revolved around them. So figuring that out was, working through that is always interesting, right? One of the things that we say to each other is, I can see things because I raised my biological child and she's accustomed to the way I do things and I'm accustomed to the way she does things.
Right.
I also had blind spots that I couldn't see because it was just one eye. And so I would say, you're going to see things that don't bother me, or that maybe I just missed because I was the way I was raised or whatever, that you're going to see it from a different perspective. And I'm going to see things about the way you raise your child from a different perspective. And so recognizing that when I say, hey, I'm seeing this thing, knowing that I'm not coming from hurt or anger or I'm coming from, I just see something from a different perspective and you don't see that. And so I think we knew that was part of, like, there are things that Brielle can do. Brielle is my biological child. She can do that don't really tick me off as much. I'm like, I know what you mean. I don't care. And
Right.
Kevin's like, mm-mm. And let me explain why I don't think that's cool. Vice versa. I can see something and I go, that right there, that's not cool. And he's like, I just kind of chalked it up to she's a kid or whatever. And I go, well, let me explain why I don't see that as just kid behavior. That's cool.
Really
and
good.
so when we're able to see it from, hey, you're actually here to help me see some blind spots, it helps us. And we both understand that even if we disagree, we're going to talk about that away. We're going to always be united. And I don't mean that because I feel like you need to say, not in somewhere where someone's being abused, where you say, oh, daddy, we're not talking about excusing abuse, but other things where we disagree, we'll talk about that and then work through, okay, so what are we going to do moving forward? How do we do that? Because I don't think that's a big deal. Well, I think it's a very big deal, like Pastor Sean said. So let's go with the person who thinks that's a bigger deal. But I think recognizing that it was kind of you're here to help me see some blind spots, that helped our mentality when dealing with the blended family.
I think that's a really good point. Really good point.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, because heck, I learned how to be a parent from Pastor Evan and Pastor Sean. So the only thing I would add there was that your speech in front of your kids should be united. Even if it's not the style I embrace, it is we. Now, we're doing this because your mama like it this way, or your daddy like it. Even in that, because as an educator, kids pick up on who to target for what. And if you're using language like, oh, only your mama said you got to do it that way, when you're isolated, you're like, well, mama ain't here, daddy. Can I do this? And if you're not careful, then you're going to create that, and then it's going to find out, why did such and such tell me this happened? Because the kids are picking up on all of that. So even if even as you don't argue in front of your kids or you work it out behind, make sure the language when you're correcting your kids is, we have decided we are doing this, because if you don't, it'll be, though you handled the issue privately, your kids will see your heart behind the matter when they say, oh, your mama wants you doing it that way.
Yeah.
And so you got to be really careful of that, would be the only thing I would add to that, and give each other permission to tap out and switch in situations where you are doing a little too much, because at any point as a parent, you can get a little over emotionally involved. And so one way to work through things is to come up with a sign to be like, okay, just, babe, you should tap out on this one. Just take a second.
Yeah.
Because and you got to agree on it, because it's not that I don't think you're doing it right or I have an issue. I think you're engaged at a level that's not productive and goes against how we said we're going to.
It goes against our we used to say you want long-term vision, but this move right here is working against long-term goals. Okay, I know that we still have a lot of questions.
We have one more question.
But we're almost at 2 hours.
I know, and this is the last question for the night. It's still hanging in there. So here's the last question. This involves working relationships, like at work. And we'll just do this one. And this was the question. What's the best way to handle a supervisor who frequently oversteps boundaries without jeopardizing your career advancement, or I even say your job as a whole? What's the best way to handle a supervisor?
I think people with jobs should discourage.
I was thinking the same thing.
I was like, I don't have a job, so I mean.
Well, I got a job, but it's just me.
No,
we like each other over here.
It's just me. So if I overstep my boundaries, I did it with myself. I think y'all need to answer that.
I'll say it like this. I think it's important for people who work in an environment where there is a structure of hierarchy, where you have supervisor who may have a supervisor who has a supervisor. It's important for you to understand the necessity of building political capital. And here's what I mean. Building political capital starts with you doing your job well, okay? Mm-hmm. Making yourself indispensable. If you have a supervisor who is frequently overstepping, you have to learn how to get that supervisor to see you as invaluable. Because when the supervisor understands that part of their promotion, part of their well-being is tied to you, then you can begin to have those conversations about how you like to work best. I used to say to some of my supervisors, you really get the most out of me when I work in an environment where I can do X, Y, and Z. What I was describing was the opposite of what they were doing. But because of their necessity for me making them look good, giving them what they need, doing my job well, they heard what I needed and they saw it as to their benefit to give me what I needed rather than just me asking for something and them giving it to me. You have, I don't encourage people to read it. I know my wife doesn't like it.
Then don't say it.
Oh,
Then don't say
But
it.
there are some principles for those of you who work in corporate America that you can learn about working with supervisors. I won't even mention how you can learn it, but you can.
Ask the Lord to teach you.
Ask the Lord or send me a message. But there are some political things that you need to understand in any organization. It works like a well-oiled machine. And if you become the king in the machine, they will get rid of you. And you just have to know that.
So what I think I hear from you is operate with excellence so that when you tell them this is what works best for me, they actually care. And then you can kind of
you build a political capital, because sometimes you might need somebody above your supervisor to speak on your behalf. Not that you go tell on your supervisor, but there's been opportunities where I had a supervisor who we were not really having the conflict because I just didn't do that at work. But when I had my one-on-ones with my person above the supervisor, I would describe the thing that would allow me to work more efficient. So then when my supervisor was talking to their supervisor, they was like, yo, we really got to make sure that Edwin is in an environment where he's doing X, Y, Z, because when he does that, this produces more. So I didn't tell on my supervisor, but I made it clear with the political capital that I had in the organization that somebody else could speak for me to get me what I needed.
Can you tell how to build political capital?
Part of building political capital is the thing that a lot of people don't like doing, and it's some of the small talk things, right? I made sure that I had cross-functional meetings with people in other departments, even if I didn't care about what they were doing. I wanted them to know that I was interested in what they were doing. I wanted them to know that if there was something I could do to make their job better, let me know. And you have those 10, 15-minute meetings with people who are dotted line to you, to people who are above you. And here's what people forget: those who are below you. Because a lot of times your supervisor will ask the people below you how things are going. So I wanted the people below me to know I'm listening to you. What can I do to make your job more efficient? How can I make your job better? We call it having a 360-degree view of building that political capital. It's a lot like being a politician. And I think sometimes people go, well, I ain't here to make no friends. I'm at work to work. You're going to be the first person in that meeting that they decide they can be without, because you haven't built that political capital.
That's real.
You're right.
So that's one of the things I would say.
I think you done told them.
yeah.
I mean, I think the truth of it is that you've said many times that when you're sitting in those meetings, that the people who don't have political capital are the first people who get let go, even if they were the best worker, because they don't have anybody to advocate for them.
Because if you let the people go with political capital, now you have another fight on your hands. So people don't want that. So I let the person go who's going to cause me the least amount of resistance. And it's the person who showed up and did a good job, but they didn't come to any of the company functions. Nobody knows their name. Nobody really knows much about them. Are they married? Do they have kids? Do they even live in the city? Did they show up at the non-required meet and greet? And it's all those little things that you have to do to play. If you're going to be in, that's exactly right. Becky described it as soft skills. You have to develop those soft skills.
But I think people, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said you can be great at your job, but if you don't have the right amount of soft skills, it messes with you in corporate environment.
I think people have to recognize you can have those soft skills and even build relationships without getting deep. I know that was one question we didn't get to, But sometimes people think if I'm building relationships, we got to be best friends. You can build relationships and talk about your kids, your family, and have a solid working relationship and let it stop at a solid working relationship without getting deep into all the drama that happened with your cousin's boyfriend yesterday or whatever. And I think people get confused with building relationships and they take it too far. And then if there's any of competition or if there's ever any disagreement, they start taking those things personally, as opposed to saying, you know what, I have a solid relationship with this person, but they don't know anything about my grandfather. And that's okay.
That's okay.
That's okay.
When I say to you, hey, did you have a good weekend? I want you to say, yeah, man, it was great. Took the kids out to the beach. We had a lovely time. I don't need to know everything else y'all did that weekend. That's not the reason I'm asking that question. And so I think that's really important for people to understand.
Yeah.
I call it calculated transparency. Is that I am going to share some things because you need to see my humanity, but I'm not going to share the things that put me at a disadvantage by sharing those.
Yeah.
Here's a great example. I would not share at a job that I was going through a hard economic time because I wouldn't say like, oh, I'm going through a divorce, I'm having a hard economic time, because then now when it's time for a raise, you could potentially think that you don't have to give me the full raise because you already know I'm in a tight spot.
That you need this job.
That's not your business. That's not your business. I tell that to my therapist. I tell that to my best friend. I do not come in and say to the people that I work with that I am having a tight financial time. That's not wisdom.
Yeah.
All right, go back.
All right, that's it. 2 hours and 1 minute.
2 minutes.
You guys have anything else
I'm
you
gonna
want to say
tell
about
you,
that?
y'all will be back before the year is over. We gonna do this again because we still got so many questions we didn't even answer. So y'all just wait for the
We
next
answered
call.
8 questions in 2 hours. That's what we answered. 8 of the 20 that we had selected.
But I think this is the beautiful thing. People need to hear different perspectives.
They do.
And the holistic perspective so people can see how the information fits for them, because there is no one size fits all answer for everything.
Listen, if you've enjoyed Relationships 101 and you're still here, just put a 1 in the comment. If you can comment on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching, if you can just put a 1 in the comment, just let us know if you got anything out of this. We don't do this because we don't have other things to do. We do it because people really learn when people come together and get to talk and share. And we appreciate Pastor Nitra and Pastor Ralph for being willing to come on here on a Tuesday night for 2 hours. This is the longest one we've ever done, but I appreciate it. And the people are saying they appreciate it. I hope y'all can see the comments there.
Okay, I'm pitching something. I just want to throw it out here. I think we need a podcast.
I think we should do a live event of Relationships 101.
I think we need to do a live relationships, and we need to kick off our podcast, and we can have our podcast set up, because think about this. When Shannon and Ocho they don't always in the same place when they're doing their podcast. We need to do a podcast. We can talk about all the subjects we want to talk about. We can bring in other special guests. I think we need to have a live event and kick off a podcast.
Yeah.
Your face tells it all, Dad.
I'm just thinking about how to get that done, because I mean, basically a podcast, I'm trying to think of how different that would be than what we're doing now. I'm not saying no, I'm saying yes. I just thought it would be cool if we had one in person where people were in the audience asking the questions real time and we had to answer them like that.
Yes. And then we need to go on tour, and we could go to cities, and we could You got to be more open. You got to.
I'm not saying you couldn't. I'm not saying you couldn't do that.
We could do one in Northwest Arkansas.
We could go Little Rock.
One in Little Rock. We could do one on the East Coast. One in Florida. Have a live thing. People come in, have tickets. They can ask questions real time. Baby, listen, we are equipped for this.
Yeah.
Listen, somebody said a podcast can be filmed live.
Yes.
Yeah. That's all you got to do. The live event would just be filmed. You could have video and everything else, but I think it'd be cool.
The people said take the show on the road. I'm telling you, we need to take the show on the road. We could do this.
We could go to Orlando. We could go to Richmond. We could go to Atlanta. Ooh, we
only need a 5. Danielle, you got a place that we could come to? We really need a 5 to 7 city tour. That's what we need. 5 to 7 cities.
Yeah.
People can meet us. We can have a location. Maybe babe, I'm telling you, I think this is it. We can have merch.
We just got to be prepared for the question, because I've seen some of these programs where you have people asking some of these questions, and some of these questions I filter these down because you don't like some of the other questions they send in. So these are the filtered questions. If you do it live, you ain't getting no filtered questions.
Well, but I also think that that's why we would have a production person who would say, hey, there's some things that we're just not that we wouldn't answer it for you publicly, but we're not necessarily, because we're not looking just to sensationalize. We're actually looking to help people. And sometimes people come to those things. Oh, Daphne said, love it. Please remember the Midwest. What Midwest? Say more about what we're talking about.
Are we talking Milwaukee? Are we talking what when you say Midwest, tell us where Midwest.
Right, because it could be St. Louis to Chicago to
right.
Wait,
Montana.
Raleigh. I don't know how many people we have in North Carolina, but I'm just telling you, I think we could do this.
Josh did come out. Milwaukee.
I would love to do Milwaukee. Yeah. I like Milwaukee.
Chicago.
And if you come to Milwaukee, the people in Chicago could come over to Milwaukee. I'm not no shade Chicago. I actually like Milwaukee better than I like Chicago. No shade, y'all. Just come
maybe Memphis could come to Little Rock.
Memphis, you can come to Little Rock.
Whatever we do, Midwest, we're gonna do y'all in the spring and summer, because I don't do y'all cold.
So if anybody has any experience putting together some kind of tour like this,
if you know a venue
and you're like, we would like to come and be a part of the team to help y'all take this show on the road, then send Pastor Strick a message and we're going to start putting this together.
Listen, we appreciate you. We appreciate you guys for coming out tonight. Thank you so much, Pastor Raph. Thank you so much, Pastor Nitra. We appreciate you guys. Appreciate your insight.
Thanks for having.
Appreciate your candor. Those of you who came and joined us and have been here for the last 2 hours, I know it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Y'all go to bed. See y'all tomorrow. Don't forget, tomorrow we do have prayer. For those of you who are following us on Fellowship of Champions, we have prayer at 6 o'clock and Refresh Bible Study at 7. So get you some rest. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. Pastor Weave Ralph, Pastor Nitra, thank you again. Boom. Wait.